I'm Amy Jo Martin. Welcome to the Why Not Now show. We have Sam Goodner today joining us, and he is the new author of Like Clockwork. Sam is a very good friend, a mentor of mine. He's spent 30 years building tech companies, specifically Catapult Systems, which he exited successfully to a public company. But what's really unique about Sam is he started in the Swiss Army. So he was an officer, a mountain grenadier officer in the Swiss Army, and a lot of the concepts in his book and his entrepreneurial success come from his training being in Switzerland. And we navigate a lot of different spaces and places in this conversation, from business to life to parenting. When I say Sam is like clockwork, his precision, attention to detail, and just overall discipline is like nothing I've seen before. So be sure to check out Sam's new book, Like Clockwork, Run Your Business with Swiss Army Precision. You can find it on Amazon. You can check out samgoodner.com for more information about him as well. And without further ado, here is my friend Sam. Sam Goodner, welcome to the hot seat. Welcome to the Why Not Now show. Thank you for being here.
It's great to be here.
Are you nervous?
No.
Okay, good.
No, not even in the least.
I mean that only because being pretty good friends, like you never know where I could take this.
You're right, I don't know.
But you do know where we're going to start. So in the spirit of Why Not Now, Can you tell me about a time that you had a big decision to make and you had to ask yourself, why not now? And we will close that delta from idea to action and hear all about it.
You know, I've had, of course, like everybody else, several big why not now moments in my life. But my most recent one you know about because it actually involves you. As you know, we were introduced by a mutual friend, our friend Kenny, a couple of years ago, maybe not quite. And he's like, listen, you guys are two badass people that I love in Austin. You should know one another. So you and I scheduled to meet for coffee, I think. And it was 2 weeks out because you were traveling. I'm like, I wonder who this Amy Jo Martin is. So I looked you up online, and you're everywhere. I'm like, who is she? And I found one of your keynote speeches on YouTube, and I was going to only watch 5 minutes of it. Then I ended up watching the whole thing, and it was all about why not now. Mm-hmm. And I had been procrastinating. So 2 years ago, I retired for the second time because my daughter graduated from high school, and I became an empty nester, and I had this plan to go write a book, but I kept procrastinating, and I had excuse after excuse, and this health issue, and my mother this and that. I'm 6-7 months in, nothing. I watch your podcast or your keynote address, all about why not now, and I said, damn it, you know what? Why not now? That afternoon, I called and signed with a publisher, and I started putting a plan and writing the very next day. So by the time you and I met, I'm like, yeah, I'm writing a book.
And well, the story just couldn't. And look at what we have here.
There it is.
Talk about idea to action. It's alive. It's here. It's like ready to rock.
And it was all because of your Why Not Now keynote speech.
Well, thank you. I'm flattered, but I think, there's a lot of energy that comes into that question, and you're a person of action, I happen to know, massive action and precision. So I want to get to the book. So Like Clockwork is the name of the book, and we are going to spend some time talking about that. But let's start toward the beginning. And before we do that, though, for something was in that moment for you when you decided to green light picking up the phone and calling the publisher.
Yeah.
And if you were to just like dissect that a little bit more, do you remember that day? Was there something unique about that day? Was there something unique? I mean, outside of watching, video online, for people who are on that edge or they've been procrastinating something, what advice or what thoughts would you pose to them?
And again, I had been now thinking about this for a long time, and I kept finding excuse after excuse to not just take that leap.
Which is not your character, usually.
No, it isn't. And I really thought, what do I have to lose?
Yeah.
It was really that. I was afraid, do I even have enough content to write a book? Is it going to be lame? Is anybody ever going to read it? I'm not a writer. It's going to, how hard is that going to be? I had all these fear-based excuses. And then really I'm like, what do I have to lose? What is the worst thing that could happen? Mm-hmm. And the worst thing that can happen is maybe I write a little pamphlet and nobody reads it and it'll still be fun. So
I love that.
It was that. I'm like, you know what? I have no more excuses. Let's just go.
And so you picked up the phone and called the publisher.
That same day.
And
so
that
action.
First,
So as soon as you engage somebody, and now you're on the clock and you're committed, and I signed that contract with them to get a book done within a year, then suddenly it's on, and then my planning brain gets into action, and then it was a remarkably easier process than I thought once I got started. Like all those fears that I had, they went away as soon as I put pen to paper and I got into a daily routine of just writing every single day and researching and writing. And then 8 months later, the manuscript was finished.
It was awesome to witness because I could see you having fun and the joy in that process.
Yeah.
And also out of your swim lane. I mean, you're an entrepreneur and world-class business mind that's now writing and in a different swim lane. But okay, so let's go back to the beginning. If you were to kind of share a movie trailer of your timeline and life, could we start there and level set?
So I have this unusual background in that I was born in the States to two American parents, but they moved to Europe when I was 1. So my sister and I grew up in Switzerland. They became Swiss, we became Swiss. So local schools, local high school. With the Swiss passport comes compulsory military service for men. So after high school, I served in the Swiss military, which was a transformative experience for me that I talk a lot about in the book. In fact, I use that sort of as the hook for the book to make it a different sort of business book. Mm-hmm. I use my time in the Swiss military and principles that I learned there that I then even subconsciously applied in the various companies I ran. And I ended up starting my first company in Austin at the age of 26. I'm going to date myself. That was in 1993, so a long time ago. And, I've been running technology companies in Austin ever since. This is my second retirement. I retired for the first time after selling my previous company, Catapult Systems, in 2013. We had a 10-year plan with my family to take the kids out of school for a year and travel around the world and homeschool them while traveling the globe. And we did that in 2014 and 15.
Which we're going to get into a little more in a minute.
Yeah. And then, when I came back, I knew I wasn't ready to retire. So but I knew I didn't want to start a company from complete scratch. So I spent about a year, it took longer than I thought. I was looking for a company to buy or invest in. So I became an angel investor. I looked at, I think, over 100 deals, 100 companies in the course of a year. And then I meet this young founder. His name is Juan Rodriguez, and he had started this small startup company in, of all things, the antiquated parking space. And he had built this revolutionary technology platform, but he was stuck. He was stuck at 12 employees, stuck at $3 million in revenue. He needed some growth capital and I think some gray hair to help him navigate and help scale the business. I could provide both. So I funded his business, joined full-time as president, and then helped scale that company to where it is today. It's now the largest parking technology company in the parking industry. And again, like I said,
$1 billion valuation.
The last round of founding, we did make the unicorn status, and last time we raised money, it was at $1 billion valuation, which is always kind of cool. And
just kind of.
And then again, my daughter graduated 2 years ago. I became an empty nester and decided, I don't need to. The company now can, do well without me. Let me move on to something else.
And here we are.
Yeah.
So, okay, incredible journey personally and professionally. If we go back to Switzerland and what you've taught me even about, some people know a bit about the strategy in the whole uniqueness, but the way you've described it and then its application to business too is brilliant. That's why I love the book. And it's so tangible. So can you talk a little bit about that? And let's make sure we touch on the story of you almost didn't serve in the military, right?
It's true. So when people find out I served in the Swiss Army, they always open their eyes and
They want to see the knife.
Well, no, they laugh a bit. They go, okay, well, did they give you a Swiss Army knife? And I'm like, okay, yes, they did. And two, they say, well, wait a minute. I thought Switzerland was neutral. Why do you guys even need a military? I mean, you weren't invaded in World War I or World War II. Why do you need an army? I'm like, well, okay. So the only reason Switzerland was not invaded in either one of those world wars was because the day Hitler invaded Poland, we had 425,000 men on the borders ready to defend the country. So Switzerland's been a country for 700 years. It's one of only 2 countries in the world to have never been invaded. The other one famously being Thailand in Southeast Asia. And so we take, our national sovereignty really seriously. But it's a small country, just over 7 million people. But we can mobilize 600,000 soldiers in 24 hours if we need it. So everyone, every man, every male has to serve. You go through basic training after high school. If you're a soldier, you go through everybody becomes a reservist. So we go through 3 weeks of reserve training until the age of 30 if you're a soldier, 50 if you're an officer, and that's how we keep the country safe.
And so the defense is the ultimate defense type of thing, right? So I think that's and learning about the terrain, which we've all seen the photos and people who've been there, they can imagine, but I think of the porcupine type of, can you share that analogy?
I did. So anybody that studies, military capabilities has studied Switzerland. We are only good at one thing, and that's defense. We have no offensive military capabilities 50 miles outside of our border. We don't have the logistics, the supply lines, any of that. But when it comes to our one mission, which what I call in my chapter our unfair advantage.
Right. Chapter 5, by the way.
We are maniacally focused on defense. So built into all of our mountains, we have bunkers and cannons and enough ammunition and food to last several years of war should one break out. Every building in Switzerland is required by law to have an atomic shelter. So we have a nuclear shelter, bed for every Swiss citizen if that breaks out. Every tunnel, every bridge is pre-wired with explosives, lacking only detonators to blow up the infrastructure.
I couldn't believe that reading about that.
So we take this really seriously, and no one's ever invaded Switzerland.
Yeah, you're not going to pick up a porcupine, right? Is that kind of the?
But we're harmless to everybody else.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah. Okay, so we'll touch on the unfair advantage in a moment because that's where I was going to head next. But the story about actually potentially not being able to serve.
Yeah. So when I was good at sports when I was a teenager. Playing competitive basketball and running, cross country and a lot of other things. And then, one morning, one week, I started feeling a lot of pain in my lower back and in my hips. I thought it was just because I was training, so I trained through the pain. Woke up one morning, I couldn't move. I was in so much pain. My father had to carry me to the car, drive me to the hospital. And
were you 18?
I'm 18.
18.
I'm 18, and so doctor after doctor, hospital after hospital, test after test, nobody had any idea what I had. They just knew that I had severe inflammation that could only be partially relieved through massive doses of aspirin. I would later be diagnosed with an incurable autoimmune disease called ankylosing spondylitis. My doctor sits me down and says, listen, Sam, you're never going to run again. Our goal is to get you to walk again unassisted, but that's the best we can hope for. Now, again, I'm 18. This is crushing news, and I don't know any better. I just can't accept this fate. So I ignore my doctor's orders, and after 10 days in the hospital and 3 months on crutches, I start trying to train again. It starts with walking, then hopping, then trotting, then I pick up swimming. I'll try anything and everything. I even go see a spiritual healer. And month after month, every day, I go like clockwork. Every day, I'm training a little bit better, and suddenly I can run again, and then faster and faster. A year later, it's time for all 19-year-old Swiss young men to go through mandatory military conscription. My doctors had given me a big, thick folder filled with, information for the military doctors to dispense me from compulsory military service. I take that, I throw it in the trash, and I sign up for the most physically demanding, most rigorous branch of the Swiss military, our version of the Special Forces, not out of a sense of patriotism or duty, but because I needed to prove to myself that I had overcome this disease. So I signed up for the Swiss Mountain Grenadiers, and then the rest is history for me. But it was both the luckiest and best decision I'd ever made in my life, because that ended up impacting, frankly, my whole life afterwards. Yeah.
And now knowing you and your journey and just how you operate your day and your life, personally and professionally, it is the best title, like Clockwork, because your precision, your consistency, like there is zero wavering, whether it's the way something small gets done around the house or it's something huge. Like, it's just, this discipline is really incredible. Like, it is would you say that's your unfair advantage?
Yeah, I can't help it. I was going to show up on time for our podcast today.
We knew you'd be early.
I couldn't be late. Yeah. I still make my bed every day.
Right.
Put the dishes in the dishwasher before going to bed. I just can't help it.
Like, how you do one thing is how you do everything. It really, but it's inspiring, because that's even the small steps. Clearly, you've day by day, brick by brick, and look where it's gotten you. Yeah. So let's talk about the unfair advantage for a moment, and in business, because I've been the recipient of a lot of advice and guidance, strategic business guidance and mentoring from you, but also I've overheard and witnessed you guiding others. And one of the questions I always hear is, what are you going to be the best in the world at? And what's your unfair advantage? So can you talk to us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so that's my favorite question to ask. When I mentor young entrepreneurs, early on in our conversation, I usually start with that. So, tell me what you are or can aspire to become the best in the world at. And so usually, they might be taken aback by that. They're not quite sure. Best in the world, that's a really high bar.
Intimidating.
But I'm like, listen, first of all, let's talk about what your world is. I would say Swedish Hill Bakery is the best bakery in Clarksville.
Agreed.
For example, they're the best in the world at being, a bakery in Clarksville. And then their unfair advantage is how they become that. And they become that both from a combination of a location and by the way they, and their oven and the way that they make their breads and their croissants and all of that. And so it's this, how are you going to be different from everyone else around you? Because if you're not different from everyone else around you, then you're going to have to compete on price. Now, by the way, price might be what you want to compete on, but I want you to be deliberate about it, right? Mm-hmm. So Dell back in the day had the low cost advantage. They were deliberately competing on price and on volume. Mm-hmm. Walmart competes on price and volume, but they're very deliberate about it. Although, if not, I want to know, how are you different than everyone else in your industry so that you don't have to compete on price and that everyone knows you for doing one thing extremely well? Usually that conversation ends up being about focus. Mm-hmm. I find a lot of young companies, and when they naturally get started, they use a shotgun approach, mm-hmm. as you should, because mm-hmm. you don't know what your works, product market fit is, who your most profitable customer is, who have the shortest sales cycle, and so on. So you cast a wide net, but as the founder and CEO, your job is to very quickly start narrowing that focus. Mm-hmm. All right. So when I met Juan Rodriguez with Flash Parking, I asked him the same question early on. He was all over the board. Okay. So one of the very first exercises we did with him and his co-founder Eliseo, we sat down in a room for a few hours and we whiteboarded. I'm like, I want to hear about all of your customers. And they were all over the map. I'm like, all right, so tell me which ones are most profitable. Okay, why is that? Okay, which ones have the shortest sales cycle? Which ones call the support line the least? Which ones can use your product out of the box? And we start narrowing down on what the center of that target starts to look like. And I'm like, listen, what we're going to do going forward is we're going to ignore all this stuff out here. Even though it might sound tempting, we're going to really narrow in on what we can. And the more you focus, it's counterintuitive, the faster you're going to scale. So for example, for Flash, that meant we were going to say no to all large airport projects.
Which
By the
is
way,
lucrative, right?
They're huge.
Scopes,
Parking. They have huge parking lots. They are
They're all
huge,
different, right?
huge consumer of parking technology. Every one of them is a custom job, and so when LAX and Houston Intercontinental came to us and really almost begged us to respond to their RFP, we said no. Now our salespeople thought we were crazy. But I'm like, no, that is going to be a distraction. It's going to take us away from the core market that we need to focus on. We will get to those eventually. Eventually, when we're big enough, then you can expand.
Premium.
You can go left and right. And when the first airport is willing to take our product out of the box. So recently, I think it was last year, Flash actually closed the Denver airport, the largest airport parking facility in the country. Delivered it in 26 days. And it was a huge success, but that was years later.
Yeah.
So you start off by laser focusing on what is at the center of where you can have an unfair advantage, where you can become the best in the world at, what you can be known for doing really, really exceptionally well. That's what you want to do, and then not do all the other stuff.
And that, I think, the case studies in the book are so valuable because we do, as an entrepreneur, I know what you mean. In the beginning, it's like, okay, what's going to work? And you're getting some traction. You think, oh, yeah, I'll do all of these. And it's like, no, you're going to burn out and, everybody's going to be tapped. But then bringing that in and the saying no and having that vision and commitment to, man, that scope or that cash flow sounds really juicy over here. Is once again, it's like that. It's the commitment and the discipline.
The discipline.
It's the discipline of knowing. Okay, so when you look at, let's talk about operational scalability for a minute.
Okay.
Super sexy.
Yeah.
I mean, if you like cash flow, this is a sexy topic, right? Talk to me a little bit about what that even means to you.
Yeah, so for me, operational scalability means the ability for your company to run and grow without you in the middle of every decision. So naturally, when entrepreneurs found a company and get started and you're 10, 20 employees or less, the founder is in the middle of every decision, and that's normal. But then you become the bottleneck. At a certain size, at a certain level of complexity, if you're still in the middle of all those decisions, then your company hits a wall, and you can't scale beyond that. So operational scalability means putting the right people and the right processes in place so your company can run and scale without you in the middle of all those decisions every day, freeing you to go focus on the higher end, the more strategic kind of decisions that the founder should be focusing on, and letting the company run with, again, the right marching orders, the right people, the right processes and systems in place, knowing that will be executed well, and you don't have to worry about that every day. That, for me, is operational scalability.
And just touching back to the book, because if we share a little bit with everybody listening of how you've structured the book, right? You have different levels of, would you call it skill or... I mean, some things are some of the concepts
implementation
to implement,
difficulty.
Yeah, which is great. But you do go through. There are case studies in every single chapter, but you go through so many of these steps that you've used over and over and over, all the way from the first day on the job for a new employee to, unfair advantage. So, can you talk real quick just about how it's structured?
So, I have 30 chapters in the book. Every chapter starts with a story from my time serving as an officer in the Swiss military, a principle that I learned during that time, and then later applied to one of the companies I've run over 30 years. And everything is a story. So I'm not a researcher or an academic, so I only know my own point of view on this. Everything is a story, the way it actually happened, where people can read it and go, boy, that makes complete sense. I can apply that in my business. Or, you know what, that doesn't apply to my business, and that's fine. I also wanted to bring in other perspectives, so every chapter has a third-party case study where I interview another entrepreneur, founder, or CEO, and how they implemented that same principle at their business. And of course, as you know, you are not one but two case studies in my book. You're the only person, by the way, who's two cases in my book.
I'm honored.
And so there are two cases in the book with Amy Jo Martin. And by the way, in some of these case studies, they disagree with some of the way they did it is very different than the way I implemented it at my business. And I wanted to showcase that because there's not one size fits all. I just want to really think about the topic. But, to go back, like you, I've read hundreds of business books. When I read any business book, I'm just looking for one executable idea that I can take back and implement in my business. If I get one idea out of a book, it's a huge win for me. So my goal was to put as many executable ideas as I could in one place. That's why I wrote the book.
Okay. And that's why I like it because they're snackable. Like you could go to chapter 22 because that's what you feel like you need and read that. And then you could go to chapter 5, unfair advantage, right? Like you can choose your own adventure. I'm not saying that you need to do that, but it isn't, it's a reference piece too.
Yeah, it's not
linear. I think
linear.
You pull it off of the shelf and it can give you what you need.
Yeah. In fact, this was on advice of a good friend of mine. I put a reading guide at the end in one of the appendices that described very common business challenges that any company might be facing. My growth has stalled. My employees are not engaged. I have high turnover. I can't get my customers to renew. And I suggest if you're having this challenge, read these chapters first.
Love it. I love that. So back to you, after you sold Catapult.
Yeah.
And you had already had this vision, okay, want to do this world, like year-long tour, homeschooling your 2 children, and go travel the globe, right? And this just gives us some insight into Sam's brain. Like how long did you have that vision and were you planning literally for that?
Yes, so my then wife and I, we had this plan for 10 years. In fact, we put summer 2014 on the calendar the year our son was born.
Gosh.
Because our ideal age range for the children was, young enough to be able to credibly homeschool, old enough to remember the experience. And so we figured if we could leave when they were 9 and 11, that would be sort of the Goldilocks sweet spot, right? Because at some point you're bringing a 15-year-old with you, they're really hating you because you're pulling them out of their social network. And so literally we put that on the calendar 10 years out. Now, when it's 10 years out, it's a little bit more of this amorphous thing. You're not really planning every day for it. 5 years out, suddenly you start planning, right? My ex-wife is also an entrepreneur and CEO. And so we had to start aligning, okay, ideally, if we're going to do this, then it would be great if neither one of us had to work full-time during that time. So we'd really live in the moment, focus on the family, enjoy the experience. And so she, was able to program her exit from her latest company at the same time that I basically programmed the sell of mine. And magically, luckily, we were able to pull off to where neither one of us, we had both sold our businesses and neither one of us, was employed during the 13 and a half months we traveled to 34 countries and homeschooling our kids. Yeah.
Okay. So I can just imagine that the spreadsheet I know that there was a plan and you knew where you wanted to go, but there had to be some a little bit of flexibility, I imagine, in there. But how does that even work? 34 countries, 13 months, 11-year-old, 9-year-old homeschooling, the logistics alone, but also the daunting potential nature of that's a long time. Yeah.
So like anyone else, you start doing research ahead of time. And as it turns out, many families have done this before you. So you find books they've written, blogs they've written, and in fact, we even interviewed a few. And you start getting their lessons learned, which is super helpful. One of them that kept coming over and over again is you need a practice trip before you take the big trip. So we took the year before a 6-week driving tour across the United States, the 4 of us, to see how we would live in an extended, trip together. We learned a lot.
Oh, I bet.
Right? Even how to pack, when to do laundry, all that.
Where the annoyance, when
you need some alone
struggle city is going to show up. Yeah.
Do we stay in log cabins and sleeping bags, or do we or nicer Airbnbs? We learned a lot. The plan, and I have to give my ex-wife Caroline 100% credit on this. She actually exited her business 6 months before me and spent 6 months with a travel planner and with a travel agent, really planning all of the destinations. So the way we did it is we were firm on, because we had 2 kids, so we couldn't just show up and not have a place to stay.
Right. And
So-
you needed the homeschooling, right?
That was what we agonized over the most. I'll touch on that in a second if you want me to, but we needed to know we were going to land and take off, and have a place to stay in all the countries we were going to be in. And but once we were there, we had a lot more autonomy and freedom to say, what are we doing today? So it was a combination of planned and unplanned activities. We also bought an around-the-world plane ticket, which is substantially cheaper. The one condition to buying those is you cannot change the legs once you've bought the ticket. And so once they're dialed in, you can't change them, but you're paying like pennies on the dollar.
Oh, wow. Okay, that's interesting.
Yeah, it's really cool.
That's cool.
We supplemented with a lot of other, because it wasn't enough, but
At least you had your anchors, right?
We had our anchors. So the homeschooling, we agonized about that the most. We were I was having nightmares at night thinking my kids were going to come back and be held back a grade and we were going to fail them as parents. We went and talked to their principal and teachers and all of that, and everybody said, listen, as long as you focus on reading, writing, and math, at that age especially, everything else they can learn experientially. So they end up reading 50 books on their iPads while we were traveling. We worked with an elementary school teacher to help him give writing assignments, and we had them travel blog daily. And
That
they
is
use
awesome.
And they use Khan Academy for math, which is
Great.
this, adaptive learning,
Brilliant.
which is amazing. So my kids came back, I'm not kidding, reading and writing at a high school level. And they were 3 years ahead in math. Wow. And they did an hour and a half of schooling a day. That's it. 7 days a week, an hour and a half every day.
Gosh.
So what we were worried about the most ended up being actually the most trivial part.
So as you look back and with the point of view of your kids now, and they're telling you, as they're recalling the trip and the big takeaways, and like, what are some of the biggest takeaways that they had and how they experienced the trip?
Well, of course, you should probably ask them that question,
Right.
but they certainly both know how to pack a bag. my last summer, my daughter, when she was 18, planned a 6-week vacation, planned for and paid for by herself, a 6-week vacation across 7 countries in Europe with her boyfriend.
I remember that.
And my entire contribution to that was, don't forget your passport.
And you took her to the airport,
And I
right?
took her to the airport.
That's so cool.
They certainly have a love for travel. I hope they have an appreciation that, it's easy to raise kids in Westlake, Texas, thinking that Texas is the center of the universe.
Yeah.
It's easy. They know for sure there's a bigger world out there. Both of them went out of state to go to college. So I think both of them have a broader view than just, than just the Texas view that's easy to kind
bubble.
of, the Texas bubble. Yeah.
Yeah. So cool. To stick on the parenting topic for just a moment, and then I want to go back to, I just remembered, I love hearing your story about the Microsoft partnership and being like the number one.
Yeah.
So AI, obviously, we talk about AI a lot, and it's exciting. You also have a lens of, as an entrepreneur, first-time entrepreneur at age 26, and being in Texas and also working for Dell and then not, and then building technology companies all your life. You have a really unique point of view. And can you share a little bit of how you feel you're preparing your kids and their ages now, if you're okay with that?
Yeah.
And the email, the manifesto email that I got to read. It was so cool.
So my kids are 20 and 22. And I think, like a lot of kids their generation, still in college, about to graduate, they're terrified about what AI could be doing to the entry-level job market for them. And that's not completely without its truth. There's some truth to that. I think it's exaggerated. My point to them was, listen, in my lifetime, I've seen many technology inflection points. This is the biggest, fastest one I've ever seen in my lifetime. It's like by orders of magnitude. And I would love to be graduating from college right now. Why? Well, but you have a choice. And the choice is either embrace AI fully and come out of college AI, AI enabled, AI native, or be completely left behind, right? It's kind of like back in the day when computers came out. If you said, listen, I'm sticking to my typewriter and my fax machine. These have served me well for the last 20 years. You're going to be left behind. This is orders of magnitude faster than that. And so I talk to my kids, and I talk to all their friends. I give them the same message. I go, listen, use AI every day. I don't care what field you're in. It could be business, architecture, music. Embrace it. Use all the tools. And be native. By the time you graduate from college, be an AI native, and you will be gobbled up. And the opportunities in front of you, if you want to start your own business, for example, it's never been easier to start your own company with all of the AI-enabled tools that are available to you. Yeah. God, I can only imagine.
One employee unicorn companies soon, right?
But if you don't embrace it, then it's going to be tough. Then you're going to go to the trades, right?
Yeah.
I'm sure you've referenced this book before. My favorite book, and I asked my kids to read both of it, is called The AI-Driven Leader. It's I thought it was a great introduction to how to use AI as a thought partner, which is a term I'd never even heard before. Yeah. That's revolutionized my thinking around it. Yeah. So I highly recommend that book. And I use AI for something every day.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I love how you packaged that message up, shared it with your children, preparing, like you're still just guiding in such a unique way. It's really cool. What's one thing that you find yourself learning over and over?
Learning over and over again. Oh, it's a great question. I'm not sure how to answer that question. I try to only make mistakes once. To be clear, I've made plenty of mistakes over and over again, but I can't come to think of any one thing that I keep learning over and over again. On.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's really amazing.
Except I get in my own head. I mean, if anything else, I think I'm my own worst critic. And so if anything, I find my own insecurities, my own self-doubt usually is what gets in my way, which you would think, well, that's kind of silly. And it is intellectually, but then emotionally, when you get into your own head and you get your own insecurities about anything, that seems to be the lesson I probably keep learning over and over again.
That's great. I mean, the self-awareness of that is really cool. And we've talked about this a bit. And what do you do when I know some of the things that you do to go, untangle that, and that you have a protocol, right?
Yeah, I go for a long mountain bike ride.
Yeah.
Every time.
Yeah. And you've mentioned walks before too, but
if I don't have a mountain bike available, obviously breathing exercises, if you know how to do those,
it's movement.
It really helps. Just calm yourself from that unnecessary anxiety. Anything to take your mind off of really what's causing the anxiety or the self-doubt at the moment. Again, for me, it's a mountain bike ride. I think everybody has their own version of that. But get busy, get physical, get to doing something else. And then I find myself kind of pushing through that anxiety and self-doubt.
The wave just tends to then finally. Good to know that, we're all still human here, as far as we know. So when you look at, would you consider yourself you're retired at the moment?
We'll
call
it temporarily retired for the second time. There's been a lot of really fun activities related to the book. And I'm sure that I will find another company to go help scale at some point here in the near future. But I'm currently retired from any operational work, yes.
Which is nice to not have that, but still be able to help and stay connected. Like some of the mentoring you've done with folks at the Capital Factory and their ideas and what you're here, you still get to have your finger on the pulse and be, using your own expertise and giving back, but also probably learning a ton.
Listen, it's a favorite part of my day is to go mentor young entrepreneurs. I love it, love it, love it. It's frankly maybe the biggest reason I wrote that book. I've been a mentor at Capital Factory now for over 10 years, and you forget, right, that when you're just getting started, some very basic things that you and I would take for granted, they're struggling with for the first time. And I've often found myself going, okay, let me repeat this same message. Now I can go, listen, read chapter 17 and let's talk again next month and let's digest that.
Yeah. So
for me, this was a big way to give back to that sort of young entrepreneur community.
Yeah.
So it's the best part of my day. And I get more energized and learn more from them than they do from me. Like I keep my pulse on all the latest stuff going on. And again, I focus on technology companies primarily, and a few others. Like I mentor a young kid and he's a friend of my son's. And my son said, hey, I'd like you to mentor this young kid. He runs a construction company in North Carolina. I'm like, a little bit outside of my wheelhouse, but absolutely. And I have a monthly call with him. And again, he runs a residential contracting company that's growing. And he's 22.
That's amazing.
And killing it.
Good for him.
And of course, we focus on a chapter of my book every month. So
that's great.
Yeah.
Good. It is, I'm sure, so handy to be like, here you go. And we'll talk about it after, because you just say the same things over and over. And then I have you on speed dial, and it's like, could be any moment in the day. I'm like, all right, this is happening. What do we do? And you're like, first, we're going to take a deep breath. So when you look at, just really annoying. I imagine it's like your personal brand is like how someone feels about you when, that photo or that name pops up, and I'm like, oh, there she is again.
That's never what I think when your name pops up.
There she is. No, but it's so valuable to have the people who've just been through these things. You've seen so much. Can we talk about, there's two stories I love. Can we talk about the day you were trying to figure out what type of entity you were going to start legally? And then I went the Microsoft realization, and then what happened there. So
the first one falls under some of my funniest mistakes. And to be clear, I've made every mistake an entrepreneur can make. I think all of us probably have, and hopefully you only make them once. But I've made every mistake in the book. The first one that I remember making was the day that I incorporated Catapult Systems in 1993. This was pre-internet, so I knew I needed probably some help. So I opened up the Yellow Pages to look for an attorney to help me incorporate this company. And I was living in South Austin. I was rooming with my best friend David, and I was looking for an attorney that wasn't too far geographically. So I found one that was 10, 15 minutes away, out on 290 West. And I call him and make an appointment. I'm driving out, and I'm in the middle of nowhere going, where am I? And I see this big warehouse, and I get to the address. It's a kind of big warehouse right off the highway. And there's, sure enough, a little attorney's office. Well, as it turns out, the attorney was wearing cowboy boots and jeans, was also a pecan farmer. Yeah,
that's
attorney,
cool.
Attorney on the side. And, he pulls out this literally out-of-the-box binder to incorporate a business with all pre-printed forms. Literally goes, he blows the dust off of it, and he starts asking me one question at a time. What's the name and all that? And he says, okay, well, what would you like your legal entity structure to be? And I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, well, do you want it to be an LLC, an LP, an S Corp, a C Corp? And I'm like, I don't know. What is Dell Computer Corporation? My employer at the time. And he says, I think they're a C Corp. I'm like, I think I'm going to be a C Corp.
That sounds like it's good to me.
That ended up being the wrong choice for a privately held company from a tax reason. And it took me 10 years to unwind that decision. But, you just forget that you don't know anything when you get started. It's a lot easier to incorporate companies today. But that was my favorite, funniest mistake because I
love
literally
that.
didn't know.
And the pecan farmer's like, well, choose your own adventure. Like, here's your options. Here are your options. Well, these guys are doing pretty well. Why don't I do what they're doing? I love it.
So I still have the scans of that original incorporation document because literally it came with articles of incorporation. Everything was pre-printed, and I just filled in my name and signed and my partner's names, and it was just on a pre-printed binder. I mean, those were back in the days. And so your question about Microsoft. So,
and real quick before Microsoft. So if anybody is in the process of preparing their company for sale or in that M&A, you should Google Sam's name, Sam Goodner. Go on YouTube. You'll find an interview of him talking through this process when you sold to a public company.
I did.
Right? And it's it's basically a masterclass in how to prep and the thoughts and the things that you went through. So I watched that, I think, before we met, when you were watching the Why Not or the keynote or whatever. So just note to self, because I mean that was a big deal. Like, that was huge.
It was a big learning experience too.
And it was like no joke. I mean, 2 decades of building this company. And so if you're in that exit or taking a company to market, make sure you go take a look at that. Okay, let's go to Microsoft. One of the things that got you to that point, right?
So quick history there. When I started the company, we accidentally became an IT consulting company. And in the 90s, with the advent of the internet and then Y2K and then migration from mainframe computing to client-server computing, there was more work than there was talent out there to deliver it. So our focus was, if we can just find, attract, and retain the best talent in the industry, then we had a business. And we did everything for everybody. In any project, any kind of customer, we would do. And that lack of a strategy worked all the way until the dot-com bubble burst in mid-2000. And then suddenly it was time for a reckoning. It was, you're probably too young to remember this, but our entire industry crashed. We lost half of our customers in less than 6 months. And for the next 3 years, it was really just about survival. And we barely made it, and we got lucky in how we got lucky there. But what we were faced with is we looked like everyone else in our industry. We were not known for doing any one thing particularly well. And when you look like everyone else, it's really hard to stand out. And so we were really focused on this: what can we be known to become best in the world at? And
unfair advantage.
And so that the unfair advantage, and when we leave a conversation with a prospective client, it's anchored in their mind, okay, if I have this kind of project, that's who I call. We looked initially if we could focus on an industry vertical specialization. We couldn't find one industry that was recession-proof enough for our comfort at the time. And then we looked horizontally to maybe if we went all in on one technology partner, we could become world-class at delivering those types of solutions. And we could have chosen IBM, we could have chosen Oracle. We chose Microsoft. We liked where they were going with their product roadmap. We liked their partnering model. And we bet the company on it. Our first initiative was we were going to exit all non-Microsoft projects within a year. We were going to only hire Microsoft consultants. We were only going to train on Microsoft technologies. We were going to actually broaden the kinds of services we did within the Microsoft ecosystem to really focus on things that they cared about. And we set out to become the #1 Microsoft partner in the world, a big ambition for an Austin-based technology company back in the day. And we did. We eventually became the #1 ranked Microsoft partner in the world before we were sold in 2013. And our entire corporate strategy revolved around that. We were Catapult Systems, the Microsoft consulting company. And if you left any conversation with any one of our employees, you would know, if I have a Microsoft project, I'm going to call these guys. And that's all we did.
And didn't you have like a list of the top 100 influencers within Microsoft, like the influential minds
Yeah. So we had a multi-pronged strategy, of course, to achieve this. One of them was and there's a chapter in the book on this called It's All About Who You Know. We made a list of the top 100 Microsoft influencers within Microsoft that could impact our business. We made that list of the top 100, and then we
not like online influencers. These are
no. These are
the people that are in the Microsoft
at Microsoft. And by the way,
decision makers.
Finding that list was actually, the first 20 or 30 are easy. Then after that, it becomes more difficult. And it's not the obvious suspect. Like Bill Gates and Steve Ballmer were never on the list. They could not influence a company our size. We had a few EVPs and VPs, but a lot of them were in sales, in their product group, in their consulting organization, in their marketing organization. And we did a divide and conquer. Across the entire organization, we divided and conquered. I had a list. All of my executive team had their own list. Our architects had a list. Our principal consultants had a list.
So smart.
And they got to know, you talk about this, of course, in your program at Renegade, how you can really get to know someone and show genuine curiosity and get to know them without ever making an ask. Mm-hmm. We had to really build a genuine, curious relationship before ever making an ask, if ever. Mm-hmm. But we ended up always being top of mind because of those connections that we made. Whenever a project came up, whenever they had to write a case study, whenever they were looking to dole out marketing dollars, whenever they were voting for Microsoft Partner of the Year, somehow our name always floated to the top because we were making all those one-on-one connections with individuals. Companies don't make connections with companies. Individuals make connections with individuals.
Yes, humans connect with humans, not logos. Connections convert, compound over time.
You said it first.
No, it's so smart. I mean, you were everywhere. The relationships were just networked in there. It's so wise. I mean, I can imagine the day that, I'm sure it was a series of events, but like realizing this is the way to go. This is the strategy, and then the relief and also the pain of having to let go of customers that weren't in that bucket over the next year. But just the clarity and the focus.
I mean, our first test came, one of our previous customers, a CIO had moved to another company, called me up and said, Sam, I have a $3 million project for you, but it's an IBM WebSphere project. And I said, and this was, by the way, the market hadn't turned around. This was 2003, before the wind was in our sail again. And I said no, because it was going to take us off of the new focus that we were, that we had, and my executive team thought I'd lost my mind, but it was the right decision. And once the market came back in 2003, because we were now completely solidified in this unfair advantage, we ended up growing 70% a year for the next 5 years.
Yeah, that's crazy. It's such a cool, and having almost lost the business, right? I mean,
we came so close.
I bet so many of your competitors were just wiped. So many. So here we are. It's 2025, I think. I'm in 2026, but let's ground ourselves. When you wake up in the morning and when you put your head on the pillow at night, how do you measure success for that day?
At the top of that list of priorities for me is, of course, still my children, right? So, but of course, they're in college now, so I don't interact with them every day. My best days are the days that I get to still interact with my children, which is weekly. We have a weekly scheduled call with both of my kids on FaceTime, so I can see how they're doing. That's always the best day.
Like Clockwork, right?
That's always the best day of my week.
I love that.
For me, it's always, my best days always come if I've had an opportunity to contribute somehow to, in these days, it's mainly through mentorship and coaching. So whenever I have the chance to mentor someone that day and impact their business, or see, how last month's session impacted their business over the last 30 days, that's always, that's always the best part of my day.
So if people are listening, they want to go get the book like Clockwork, or they want to get in touch with you to come and maybe speak to their company or speak to their organization, what's the best route?
Thank you for that question. So the book is on Amazon, right? Both the hard copy and the audio book. It's in my voice, so be prepared for that one. And you can go to samgoodner.com if you want to reach out to me directly.
samgoodner.com.
Yeah.
Yeah, pretty simple. And if we were to go back, well, first let's do just a couple of quick rapid fire questions. What keeps you up at night?
Yeah, again, it's always related to my children and thinking through, my son's going to graduate in a year. He'll be the first. And then it's like a whole new ball game now, right? Every year, every decade with your children is a new challenge, and they're about to enter the workforce. So that keeps me up at night for sure.
Yeah.
Just
Okay.
thinking ahead of that, right?
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Was there one country that just sticks out of the 34?
So many. I cannot.
Sure.
It's never one. We had special countries when, as a family, somehow you go through the normal team dynamics when you travel 24/7 for extended period of time. So, norming, storming, performing. So we had our moments, we had our tension, and then suddenly we'd get to a place and we would just level up as a family in terms of our connectedness and all of that. It just happened to happen in places like Zermatt, Switzerland, and Bariloche, Argentina, or Kyoto, Japan. It happened for sure in Sydney, Australia. So those are some of the places we remember with the most fondness, because as a family, we really connected and gelled and went up. But so
That's
many
awesome.
amazing places.
That's a great point, though. It was the experience. It was the relative, like there were tectonic plates shifting with the family, not just where you were, boots on the ground. I love it. I love that. Okay, so let's bring this home. So let's say we're back and you're throwing away the binder, right? The binder that says, here's all the paperwork that you have to dismiss you from, this mandatory service. And you're like, nope. If you were to go back and just say a couple words to that 18-year-old, or maybe you're 19 at that point, but what would you say?
Well, listen, if I get back to the 18-year-old kid who had just received that news, I would go back and say it's going to be okay. I thought my world had ended.
Yeah.
Right? I thought, I'm never going to run again. I'm never going to play sports again. I would have gone back to that kid and said, you know what, it's going to be okay. And by the way, even if you can't do those things again, it's going to be okay.
Wow.
Like, even if you're going to be on crutches or a wheelchair, it's going to be okay. I didn't think it was going to be okay back at the time. Yeah. And then when I was 19 and made that decision, I would go, hell yeah, do that. Yeah, burn the boats, go commit. Go do that. I again, luckiest decision I ever made in my life, for sure.
Luck, and it's part of your DNA, right? It's so interesting. I can't thank you enough for your time today, also for your friendship and mentorship and being an SOS, I need help. I just adore you. Thank you so much. I'm so excited for the world to read the book, learn from Sam, and anything else that I maybe forgot to touch on.
Oh my goodness. This has been wonderful. Thank you so much for having me. This has been such a pleasure, and it's such a pleasure to have you in my life. So,
Thank you. Likewise.
Thanks for having me on the show.
I'm excited. Everybody go check it out. Absolutely like Clockwork, and really cool design. And we'll have you back on soon. So thank you.
Thanks, Amy.